reality is that you're trading sometimes a 9 to 5 for a 9 to 10. What do you want out of life? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Predominant now that we haven't seen in the past years are CRA leads, especially when you're buying a property or selling a property. If you see one of those liens on there, right, it could really throw off what that seller had in mind in terms of what they were going to get back in their pocket. When I was starting the firm, I actually had a lot of individuals that were trying to talk me out of it.
Okay, guys, welcome to episode 4 of the Lending Pulse. In today's episode, we're diving into the legal side of real estate with somebody who's making serious waves in the industry, Ikbir Khangura. Ikbir is the co-founding partner of Khangura Partners, a rapidly growing real estate firm based in the Greater Toronto area. After earning his law degree from the University of Windsor, he quickly distinguished himself as a leading litigation firm in Toronto, managing files independently early in his career. In 2019, he took the entrepreneurial leap and launched his own firm, building a reputation for reliability, results, and razor-sharp legal insight. His team has handled thousands of transactions from first-time buyers to complex multi-property deals. Known for his strategic thinking, transparent client service, and ability to bring deals back from the brink, Ikbir has become the go-to legal partner for agents, brokers, and investors across Ontario. Let's get into it. How are you doing, Ikbir?
Thank you so much, Dhruv. It's such a pleasure to be here today. Honestly, congratulations on the podcast. And also, I'd like to take a moment to congratulate you on all the growth that you guys have had with your brokerage. It's been great. I'm honored to be here today.
That's awesome. It's awesome to have you here. Let's jump right into it. So, Ikbir, what first inspired you to pursue law, and what led you specifically to real estate law over other practices?
It's a great question. So, Dhruv, for me, growing up, I was always involved in a lot of different community initiatives, really embedded in our community. I grew up very humble means. And what I always wanted to do was to work in a profession in which I could not only make a living, but also contribute and give back to society, right? So law seemed like something where I was going to be able to help marginalized individuals, be a voice for the voiceless, and use my degree to make a meaningful impact in the community.
Yeah,
So-
you can do a lot more with a law degree, actually, because, well, you can fight the law, actually, right? So how did managing files early in your career shape the way that you practice today?
So when I first started my career, I was working at a litigation firm in Toronto. And what ended up happening was I was always inspired, watching a lot of these movies growing up with those litigation court scenes. I always wanted to be somebody that's an advocate, right? So when I started my career downtown and I was working, I was handling a lot of different types of litigation, right? It was mainly a lot of personal injury litigation.
Wow.
I was the youngest lawyer at that practice to get my own file load, right? So it's actually a really funny story. So a lot of the lawyers there, when I got my practice, they were able to offload files onto me, right? So I ended up starting and working and weaving through a lot of these litigation files. And, when you're the junior, you don't get the pick of the litter, right? You get what you get and you don't get upset.
It kind of reminds me of that scene from Suits, great show, by the way. Harvey Specter, he didn't start off at the top, right? He started off working for another person and he did a ton amount of work. And his work is what stood out. And then he left and he went and started this crazy company.
Yeah, and that's what usually happens, right? Like you'll see, like just like anything else, right? Whether you're building a career in real estate, in mortgages, real estate law, or anything for that fact, being at a larger firm, getting that experience, working under a lot of people, like, in terms of having that mentorship is important, right? A lot of people, when they're starting their career, I always tell them, even if you have to take a pay cut, even if you have to, put in those extra hours, being somewhere where you're going to get mentorship, you're going to get that education, it really does take you a lot.
And you know what, with mentorship is like, I feel like, we get lost in like trying to pick a mentor. Your mentor should be somebody that you want to be. If you don't visualize yourself as your mentor, if the person that really drives that passion in what you're doing, then it's the wrong mentor for you.
100%. And I've had mentors for so many different aspects of our business, even in life, right? I look up to a lot of individuals that I keep constant communication with. And I feel like it's the easiest way to build strong relationships, B, sometimes you just need somebody to bounce ideas off. And you know what? You could basically try it the hard way and you can hit your head against the wall and, recreate the map 100 times. But if you know somebody that's successful, that somebody that's willing to share the knowledge, willing to mentor you, It's the easiest way to pick up great skills.
What do you think makes a good mentor?
I think somebody that makes a great mentor is somebody that's willing to share knowledge, give back, and also take the time to help you develop and own those skills. I also think somebody that's a good mentor is somebody that actually cares and gives that time, right?
Yeah, I think, don't get lost in a mentorship where you're gonna be like doing too much work and they're not investing their, like, if you're investing your time and the mentor is not investing their time, then that's kind of a red flag right there,
Well, I
right?
think there's a big difference between having a manager or a boss or a mentor, right? They're
Yeah,
two separate things, right? I've had times even at the firm where I've taken on, like a student, an articling student, something like that. And you know what? It's so nice sometimes you get those calls back years ago and said, hey, you know what? I was stuck on this file, and that advice that you gave me, I'm still using it till today, right? It's still helping me until today. And what I really think is, especially as we've been evolving as a community, as a society, and everything's gone more with social media, and oh, we can go to ChatGTP, get the quick answer.
yeah,
I don't think that could ever replace good mentorship. I think mentorship
100%.
is super important, right, to become successful.
So, what were the biggest risks and rewards in launching your own firm at a young age?
Well, what ended up happening was when I was starting the firm, I actually had a lot of individuals that were trying to talk me out of it, and they said, "You know what? Even my parents at that point, they were very supportive, but they said, we think that you have a really great job. You're making a good salary. You're working downtown. This is the dream, right?" And when I decided to step out and go out on my own, it was due to something that I had personally, right? I come from a family that's first generation, right? I'm the first person that's ever been born in Canada. We were immigrants across the
Yeah,
seven seas, and I just had an ambition that I wanted to leave a legacy behind. It was for
yeah,
me, and the biggest reward till today has been, the relationships that I've made with people, the different clients that I get to serve every day. Making meaningful connections with the people around me. That's been some of the biggest rewards, but some of the biggest risks were um, I'd only been a couple years out of law school. I didn't have a dollar to my name. I didn't have, abundance of wealth to just that if this didn't work out, that, I was still going to be okay. I had a lot of things to think about, right? I was newly married at the time as well. But,
yeah.
they say, no risk, no reward, right? And,
Right.
and I definitely do think
It's
that
not easy to get through law school either, right? So
no,
that's like a ton of work. And then you're like, okay, now I have a ton of responsibilities.
ton of work, ton of expenses. It's not cheap to go to law school either, right? So in terms of making that decision, people always say like, when is the right time? There is never a right time, right? And
Yeah.
when you calculate your risk, you don't know how things are going to work out. But one thing that I've been very thankful for is along the way I've built some very good partnerships, met some very great people, and that have supported the firm, that have supported our business, and helped us get to where we are today.
So, what advice would you give to a lawyer who's thinking about leaving a big firm to go independent? And how do they know they're ready?
That's actually a really interesting question because I feel like that's something that's very subjective. I feel like that's something that is a question that should be answered by an individual personally. However, I think some of the more important facets is what do you want out of life? Where do you see
Right.
yourself in the next 5 years,
Yeah.
right? Big firms are not always a bad option. They have a little bit more security in the sense that there's a growth trajectory, usually a partnership track, et cetera, et cetera. But when you're starting your own business, which I'm sure you know as well, you've opened up a successful brokerage. It comes with a lot of responsibility. It comes with a lot of risk. It comes with a
Yeah.
lot of long hours, right? So when you're trying to make that decision, one thing that you should definitely look inside is where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you want to be your own boss? It's not. It always looks like rainbows and
Well, one
butterflies.
thing I think is the most important thing when you're choosing to open a company is that when you're working for a firm or a brokerage, you're focused on doing your deals and working on your personal business and doing the transaction. When you're opening the company, now it's about the rent, it's about the payroll, it's about the staff, it's about this problem, it's about that problem, and that will really become a big part of your business. And your day to day is being spent on managing and running the business versus doing the
A hundred
transactions.
percent. Like when I first opened up, I was wearing seven different hats.
Right? You have to.
I was the accounting department. I was the managing department. I was the HR department. I was the law clerk. I was the lawyer. I was the janitor. I was,
Yeah.
in terms of, when you're starting up something and you're starting a company, right? It's not always easy in terms of just calibrating and here's my operations. Here's the manual, and this is going to work out, right? There's always a lot of readjustment, figuring things out, learning stuff the hard.
I think is funny is like when the bathroom gets destroyed, none of the staff wants to go and clean it. So they're like, all right, you're going to either call a janitor. No, man, the boss is going to come, going to put on his latex gloves, going to go and clean up the toilet. He's going to make sure the business is clean and sparkling and running. That's what it means to be the boss.
Well, you know what it is?
Right?
It's that mentality. There's no job too big, no job too small, right? And if you have that type of, mindset, and if you have that type of mindset where you're willing to grind, you're willing to work those long hours, that you're willing to do the jobs that nobody else wants to do, that I think that's a good sign that you might be ready to take on this type of responsibility, right? Because look, on social media and everywhere, it looks like rainbows and butterflies, and hey, this guy's an entrepreneur. Especially nowadays, what you see is a lot of smoke and mirrors, right? Yeah. But the reality is that you're trading sometimes a 9 to 5 for a 9 to 10, a 9 to 12. Yeah. Right? You might be working all nights, you might be working weekends, right? But definitely the rewards are there. You can definitely feel a lot of accomplishment, seeing your brand grow, seeing the people around you grow. Yeah. I think the most rewarding part of my journey so far has been, I've been blessed that a lot of my staff that I started off with is still sticking around. We're still all working together, and seeing their personal growth trajectory along with your brand and the firm has been great. And that's definitely something that's rewarding.
So Ikbir, can you walk us through what a typical residential closing day looks like?
Yeah, definitely. So we close a lot of deals, and the residential closing day is usually a very exciting day for a lot of purchasers. The way that the day usually goes is by this point, the client's already signed up. All the documents have been submitted to the bank. So the first thing that we're usually waiting for on the closing date is for the funds to drop into our account from the financial institution that's usually funding the transaction, right? Yeah.
And like, what do you just like log it into your bank? You check it. Like, how does that?
So what happens is usually we have to send something called a request for funds. Okay. That's usually sent a couple of days in advance of closing, which notifies the bank that, look, our conditions have been satisfied. We're ready to close. This is the advance date. We need the funds to close on this specific date. Right. And the bank's funding department usually puts us in queue to be funded on that date. And it's funny because sometimes we get calls from brokers and other individuals in the industry, request for funds. They think sometimes that all we do is press a button and the funds button, right? and they magically appear, right?
You know what's funny is because like as a realtor, like we don't really know what the lawyer is doing on closing date, right? So it's like, how's it happening, right?
And you know what it is? It's like I always try, like whether I'm at lunch with a broker or a realtor, or at a dinner meeting, I always try to explain, like, hey, you know what? This is how a closing goes. So I think it's actually a really great question that you asked, right? Because I think like even for like refinance deals sometimes, right? We'll get the instructions and we'll get a call right away from the broker. Hey, have you ordered the funds yet? Right. But so if the conditions have been satisfied, everything is kind of, been lined up for closing, we'll request the funds on the date of closing. We usually already have the client deposit funds the day before. Yeah. So we already have the down payment and we have all the documents ready to go. Yeah. Both lawyers exchange documents on that date, right? Okay. So we send our closing package to the vendor side. The vendor sends us their closing package. Both packages get reviewed for accuracy to make sure that everything's in there that needs to be there. And then
unless you're like representing both parties,
you can't represent both parties in Ontario. No, not on a purchase and a sale. That's right? Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So there's a 2-lawyer rule in Ontario, except if you're in like a rural area where there's not enough lawyers, right? Yeah. Where there's an exception if people sign a joint retainer. But for the majority of transactions that we're seeing in the GTA, there's always a 2-lawyer rule.
You guys can't do multiple representation then?
We can't. Unlike realtors, we can't represent the purchaser and the seller. We can represent a person that's selling to buy, so a seller that's sold and then now is now buying a new house, but we can't represent the purchaser and the buyer in the same deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So what are some of the pressure points that can cause things to fall apart last minute?
Some of the pressure points that cause things to fall apart last minute, one is funding delays or lack of funds altogether, right? We've been seeing a lot of that in the last year or two in the industry where a lot of deals, people have entered into, especially the pre-construction sector, is where there's shortfalls in terms of appraisals, right? So if a property was bought, let's say at $1 million, appraisal might be coming at like, $850,000, there's $150,000 shortfall. A lot of clients are getting smarter. People are finding out of this much earlier on in the transaction,
Yeah.
and brokers, realtors, builders even are now starting to work together to try to alleviate some of these
It's
concerns,
tough.
right?
The negative equity and appraisals coming in for way less than the purchase price. It's
Dhruv,
tough.
it's just realistic, right? Like if you think about it, like 5 years ago, anybody that was turning a key to a new house was already sitting on a little bit of a profit, right? And now to see things go reverse
Yeah, it's hard.
it's something that we
I
haven't
had
seen.
some clients that bought at the peak of the COVID, like 2021, and I have this one lady, she's 105% loan to value, right? Which means that, like, basically she purchased for, let's say, $1 million, and her loan on the property is like 1,050,000. So and then she's trying to get more funding, and like, what can I do? You're already over it, right? You're over 100%. Like,
Especially like since this market, the way that it's been, lenders are going through every file with a fine tooth comb, right?
yeah.
And there's only a certain amount that any lender's appetite will have in order to lend on a property, right? So these are like some of the real concerns. Like we see funding being one of the main aspects of like why.
Speaking of funding, so what are the most common financing problems you see, and how do you help clients avoid or recover from them?
So one of the biggest financing problems that I see clients engage in, or at least over the last little bit that we've been in the market that we're in, is the fact that clients sometimes will purchase homes without going ahead and speaking to a mortgage professional early on,
Yes.
right? Look, like if you're looking for a property, it's always good sometimes to figure out what your actual budget is by speaking to a mortgage professional. What will you qualify for? There's so many different factors. Like, some people, it's unfortunate, they'll lose their job halfway through the deal.
Right.
And now, even the broker can't help, right? But one of the biggest factors that contribute to this is the fact that, if you're working with any type of realtor, any type of lawyer, any type of mortgage broker, is to actually figure out, even before you put an offer on any type of deal, is like, hey, you know what? I have to have my homework done. I
Right.
should make sure that playing within my limits type of structure, in terms of, if the bank's only going to give me 800K, I need to make sure that I have the remainder if I want to go above my budget.
So what I tell realtors and I tell everybody is that come 6 months before, right? To get the financing approved, come 6 months before. We're gonna assess. You know what happens? Sometimes these guys have like random debts on their credit report. Sometimes it's like a small issue that becomes a big issue, and it takes time for us to get that removed. It takes time for us to pay things off. It takes to get things straightened up, collect all the documents. It's like, it's a headache too, because you got to go find this T4, you got to go find this document, you got to give me this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And it takes time,
It
right?
does, right? And sometimes you even have to help your client. Like I know this one lady, she's a hell of a broker. She does amazing work, right? And what she'll do is, when she takes on the client, like, there's ways to fix credit. There's ways to consolidate debt.
Yes.
There's ways to prepare to put in an application so you can be
100%.
successful, right? It's about the steps in a transaction, right? And it
Yeah.
should be mechanical, right? If you don't have that money laying around cash to purchase an asset, and if you're going to be going to the bank for finance, it's always worth it to speak to a professional that specializes in finance, that'll help you get the funding done right early on.
So, what kind of red flags do you look for that make you pause or dig deeper before closing?
A lot of them are title issues, right? So, like, you'll see on any agreement of purchase and sale, there's a title search date, right? So a lot
Yeah.
of times, any of the red flags that we usually get on a transaction are found on that date, right? When we pull title, when we pull all the instruments, we'll see if there's any liens against the property. We'll see if there's whatever mortgages are on title. One thing that's becoming more predominant now that we haven't seen in the past years are CRA liens.
Yeah.
The CRA is getting a lot more aggressive, especially when you're buying a property or selling a property. If you see one of those liens on there, right, it could really throw off what that seller had in mind in terms of what they were going to get back in their pocket. Or
Yeah.
alternatively, sometimes,
Liens.
yes, and sometimes we've
Yeah.
seen what you've called a negative equity situation, where,
Right.
if they're 80% loan to value on their home with their mortgage, and after that you see a
Have you
CRA
ever
lien.
seen one of those, like, I see these cash day loans, right? And it's like hilarious because, like, they compound with the interest. And then it's like you took like a $5,000 loan, and next thing you know, it's been like 10 years, you haven't paid it, and now somehow you're buying a property, you're selling a property, or maybe you're getting a will settlement or something, right? And it's like boom, like you get hit.
100%. So a lot of people don't understand is that when you have a credit product, right, and if you haven't paid it in a while, and if you get served and it actually ends up going to court, they end up getting a judgment. It forms something called a writ. right? And it's a writ of execution. It means they have a judgment against you. So even if they don't have a lien against your property, they have technically a writ of execution registered against that name in that land registry office, right? So what happens is whether you're purchasing or selling, that amount would need to get paid out, whether before you buy or if you're selling from the proceeds of
Does
sale.
that get deducted off your income? Like if you work a job?
That's if they proceed by way of garnishment. Yes.
Garnishment.
Yeah.
You
Garnishment is
checks
one of the
garnished,
remedies that are available to a judgment creditor.
Then
right?
you're working cash jobs. So, what do you look for in a great realtor or mortgage agent partnership?
I feel like a great partnership is the crux of what makes this industry successful. I feel like partnering up with good realtors and mortgage brokers is one of the secret ingredients to a successful recipe if you want to be a successful real estate lawyer, if you want to be a successful realtor, or if you want to be a successful broker. Our industry is focused on client service, right? And you want to basically find a partnership in which somebody matches your rhythm, right? You want to be working with people that are on the same bandwidth as you, right? If you are giving it 110%, you want to work with the brokers and the realtors that are giving it 110%, right? And the reason behind that is because you want to have like my father told me at a very young age. He said, you know what? He said, if you're gonna have a business, right, and you're gonna work at this business every single day, and you're gonna be, it's your life's work at that point, right? It's your baby, right? You want to form strategic partnerships with individuals that you can have fun with, that you can enjoy calling, that meet your wavelength in terms of client service, that share some of the same values as you, right? Because the reason is I'm a firm believer that, you know, we might not be here for a good time, but we're definitely here for a long time. So so you know, if you're working on a high volume of transactions, right? If you're working on a high volume of transactions, if you're going to be in the industry for a while, you got to look out and find those individuals that share those values with you. And the reason is because what's going to happen is a successful lawyer or a successful realtor or a successful mortgage broker will share some of the same types of values that you need to make yourself successful, right? And they'll give because like the client, if you think about it from the inception of the transaction, they usually start with the realtor, right? That's the honeymoon phase, right? The honeymoon phase is you're looking at houses, you're going to your showings. It's a very fun time, right? And then your offer gets firm, right? And that's when the marriage starts, right? The marriage starts after that point. It's like an engagement. Now you got
to also assess, like, okay, is this relationship worth it or not, right? Like, you know, when you first start off in the industry, you're like, all right, I'll work with you 100%. Yeah, be my partner. But you know what real partnership is? Like when you're sending your partner deals and your partner is sending you deals.
100%.
That's a real partnership.
It's a symbiotic relationship, right? You know, referrals are a great way to, you know, basically help each other out in this industry. You know that you work at a certain wavelength. Your partner there, that's a realtor or a lawyer or a mortgage broker, is working the same wavelength. You have that understanding, and you also have that confidence, right? Because I feel like one of the most dangerous things to do in our industry is sometimes give a referral, right? I've been in those situations in the past as well, where you refer somebody something and they're not operating at that same level of service as you, and now the client is blaming you for being referred somewhere, right? So I always tell people,
reflection of your own business,
exactly, right? Because if they've put that trust in you where they're going to take that referral, it almost comes with a responsibility, an obligation, right? For me, like the files that I generate myself that are coming directly to me, that's, you know, it's great, right? But whenever, you know, an industry partner, somebody else gives me a file, I know that, you know what, I have to make sure that I'm never making my industry partner look bad, right? You have to make sure that and those are the types of right relationships that are supposed to be there, right? You know, symbiotic business, referring files back and forth, but you got to understand that some of the, like realtors, it's easy for realtors to refer mortgage brokers files, right? And mortgage brokers, it's easy to refer clients to to lawyers, right? But it's also about that, in that triangle, right? Everybody needs to be working at a certain wavelength to make sure the client gets the best service possible. Yeah.
Ikbir, can you share a closing that went completely sideways and how you managed to save it?
Yeah. So, you know, we had a closing, actually, I think it was last year, and it didn't go sideways due to finance, didn't go sideways due to any other issue at all. And The way that it went sideways was there was a tenant in the basement of this apartment, right? So the owners were living upstairs. The night before closing, the stove was left on with a pan of oil in the kitchen.
Wow.
It was a recipe for disaster, right? So what ended up happening was the basement caught on fire,
Yeah.
burnt down.
Oh no.
Upstairs was still unscathed; it was still all right, right? And we ended up in a situation where and you know how lucky this person was. It happened after they did their last visit to the home. So they did their last visit that evening. The purchasers, right? We were on for the sellers, right? And they left the property, and 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, home's on fire, it's burning down. It's in the news.
No
It's
way.
actually in the news, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, the fire department was great. They came in, fire was put out. Now we're dealing with a situation where we have to disclose to the other side, right?
Right,
So
right.
I'm talking to my clients. I'm like, we have to have a meaningful conversation. I called the realtor as well, put them on a 3-way.
So these guys are coming to get their keys and the house is on fire, right?
They're ready to close. They're ready to fund us and everything, right?
It's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
The house is burning down.
It was definitely like when I called the other lawyer, like he couldn't believe it. He's like, "You're kidding me." He's like, "We're in funds." He goes, "We're ready to close today."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, look, you know what? We can work on this together, and we can try to come up to a pragmatic solution that works for both parties, right?" And our clients were very reasonable. Their clients were also very reasonable as well. We basically ended up negotiating a deal between the parties where the insurance, because the ownership insurance was still under our client's name, right?
Right.
And they actually ended up rebuilding that whole basement for them, state of the art. It was amazing, right?
Right.
Because it was through insurance,
Okay.
and they got to build it exactly how they wanted, as long as the permits allowed, right?
Structural was still
Exactly, right? And then we were just lucky in this situation that the purchaser's agent was very cooperative. Their lawyer was very cooperative. It does make a difference who you work with, and that's another point I want to touch on. Is some of these situations where people look at me, my clients looked at me and said, "Hey, you're a hero. You still got our house sold. Everything's great." But it wasn't just me. It's like even the other side. They were working with a great counsel. He was very pragmatic in his approach and said, let's figure out a solution. The other clients were reasonable. The realtors were working together. And now we came up with a solution that made sense for everybody, right? And so like that's the type of people you also want to work with, is people that are not trying to find problems, are the people that are working together to find solutions,
Yeah,
right?
no, that's a crazy story. Like, imagine you're trying to close your house and it's on fire.
Yeah.
So my question is, like, did they like how what they had to build the basement before they took possession, or they took possession and then the insurance company built the
So
built the
once
basement?
once they
Yeah.
went in there and they fixed everything up, like in terms of like they were cleared it for occupancy, they were able to move upstairs because the fire didn't have traveled there, right? It didn't travel.
So what, they were just living in the upstairs while the basement was burnt
Exactly,
down?
and they
Oh,
got
that's wild.
and they got the
Okay.
basement redone, right? Again,
Yeah.
like as soon as the house was ready for occupancy, they were able to move in. But the good thing
So it
was,
wasn't that bad of a fire.
no,
It was a fire, but it wasn't like burn the house down.
Our
Right,
our
yeah,
client covered
okay.
their rent until they were ready to move in.
What would you do if like the whole house burned down? I guess the insurance would just pay it out, right?
Insurance would pay it out, but
Yeah.
but at that point, if you're not able to convey the asset that you had negotiated, right, the purchaser could easily back out of the deal as well, right? So, because obviously, if they were promised a standing structure and it's
Yeah.
burnt down to ash, right, you're not getting what you bargained for.
You're not getting what you paid for, right? At the
Yeah.
end of the day. Where's my next question? Here it is. Have you ever had to come up with a creative legal strategy that saved a deal or a client a significant amount of money?
Yes, actually, just this morning. So we're dealing on a pre-construction. We were dealing with a pre-construction purchase, and what ended up happening is it was actually a really novel situation, and you as a mortgage broker might really appreciate it,
Yeah.
right? So the client put down a 10% deposit because they wanted to go through a CHMC. CHMC insurance, insured mortgage. They were only planning on putting 10% down the whole time, right? And even when the builder had this project, you only needed to put 10% down before closing, right? And what ended up happening now is the builder, the closing's coming up. Obviously, the client is looking for a financing solution, right? But the builder is also not giving them that extension that they
What was
require.
the purchase price?
I think it was 1.2 million.
Yeah. So he should, was he a first time home buyer?
First time home buyer.
Yeah, you should qualify for 10%
100%. The
down.
problem is not the qualification here;
Yeah.
it's the amount of time that he has. So before he was working with some other mortgage brokers. Finally, he's working with another new agent
Oh,
that's
that's a
able to.
big
So
problem.
now
Yeah.
the builder's not giving us enough time to close, right? So what we ended up doing is we ended up contacting the builder, right? We spoke to them and basically told them exactly what's happening on the deal, and the builder basically agreed to give a vendor take back mortgage on this deal now,
Oh, wow.
right, at 4%,
That's insane.
right? So myself and the builders council were able to have a great conversation, kind of weave through the file.
You know, builders don't do that. Like that just shows like, okay, the market is like that bad where the builder is like, like people got their pants down right now.
You know what it is? I actually find it very refreshing. And you know what it is I think this is how real estate's supposed to be done. I feel like all parties are supposed to be working together to find solutions to problems, right? For a long time, especially during the boom, what happened was builders didn't care if clients defaulted. They would keep the deposits, relist, make even more money and everything. And now that, we're seeing that builders are actually coming up, meeting clients halfway, working with them, right? Again, I appreciate the builders approach too, right? Like, a lot of times people were making profit on these new builds, right? And it's not like the builders were making more profit off the clients, right? It's just a matter of where the market is. But to see them working together with their counsel, with the sales offices to accommodate these clients is still, because a lot of these individuals are still serious about closing, right? It's just the finances are saying otherwise, right? So to find that parties are actually, working together to make this happen, it's quite refreshing.
Competition is good, and it's hard too at the same time because look, right, like we have realtors, there's a million realtors, but at the same time it's like, okay, that's what really defines the value of service, right? When you live in a monopolized world, where is the drive to
Well,
create
it
service,
just comes
right?
down to saturation, right? Like all of our industries, right? Real estate law, being a real estate broker or being a mortgage broker, there's a lot of saturation. There's, you know why? Because the barriers to access are especially not that difficult, right? And you know what? Not to say that there's realtors that are better than others. It's just if you have the option of having so many people in the market, right? It's not bad doing your research, finding out someone that you can really work with. I know a lot of individuals, even clients of mine, that'll say, "Hey, you know what? I just went with my family."
Yeah, don't work with the guy just because he's related to your like uncle or something. Like, just don't work with a realtor because he's your uncle, right? Like, do research. There's so much better options out there. Like, and you're paying for it at the end of the
To be
day,
fair,
right?
like I guarantee you, some people have relatives that are great agents,
I don't
right?
doubt it,
Right,
right?
but
Like,
the thing is, it's to at least take that one step of due diligence,
check,
right? To
right?
check who's a good fit for you, right? And especially whether whoever you're going to use for your real estate, obviously you must be comfortable because you're buying one of the most important investments in your life, right? Which is your home, right? Especially if it's your principal residence. But at the same time, at least make sure that you're getting your finances checked. Make sure that you're going to a mortgage broker, right? I always kind of call it a health check. Like before certain types of activities, you need to be cleared by a doctor,
Cleared
right?
by a doctor.
So
yeah.
buying a home, I think one of the things that you have to be cleared by a health check is go talk to a broker first, right?
Check your health on your finances.
That's it, right?
So with so many legal and regulatory changes in real estate, how do you stay ahead and keep your advice sharp?
So I do a lot of research, right? I also keep in touch with a lot of my mentors. I have a group of individuals that I'm very close with. Many of them that are much senior than me. That we often discuss a lot of different issues that are happening in the market, that are affecting lawyers, that are affecting the closing process, but also doing the continuing professional development. So us lawyers have to do our CPD hours every year, right? And making sure that you're actually studying that niche practice area wherever you're practicing is helpful, right?
You guys study a lot. It's insane.
The law is
but
fluid, right? It's
yeah.
forever changing, right? And the thing is that if you don't keep on top of these things, you're not able to give your client the advice and service that they will.
Plus, like certain cases impact the outcomes of future cases.
True.
Right?
Look, we're sitting here today, right? And there could be a landmark case or a decision by the Supreme Court that gets, basically written tomorrow, and now the whole law on a certain subject area might be changed due to the precedent, right? So, and in terms of like how the law works, it's very fluid, right? So what we always have to bear in mind being representatives and giving people legal advice is that we're staying educated ourselves.
Right. So, what's one daily habit or personal discipline that's helped you grow as a business owner and a legal professional?
One thing that's helped me grow as a legal professional, as an individual, as a business partner, as a father, is giving time to myself. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because you have a thousand things going on in your life every day, right?
Yeah.
But I always make sure that when I wake up in the morning, that I'm always at least giving myself an hour or 2 hours every day. And that might be for physical development, might be for mental development, might be for reflection or meditation, whatever it is. It's if you're gonna try to operate at 110% every single day, you're
Yeah.
not gonna be able to do it without taking good care of yourself, right? They all
Yeah, but what do you are you like sacrificing sleep? Like how do you wake up? Because I find it hard to, wake up extra early and sacrifice that sleep time for personal health time, you know?
is it's I feel like a lot of individuals basically, especially in our industry, they try to reward themselves at the end of the day by still staying up a little bit late to catch that game, catch a movie,
Yeah,
catch something to make themselves feel, give them that sense of satisfaction.
absolutely.
Hey, I'm still living a normal life. I'm
Yeah,
still, able to come home and do the things that normal individuals do, right?
yeah.
However, the reality of that is that it's a false sense of realization that you're having there to say that, what, it's okay to stay up at 11 o'clock to watch a movie till 1 o'clock just because, you didn't get any screen time today, right?
Yeah.
It's the discipline that you have to give yourself. And you know what? I actually, really give a lot of props to my wife for this is that ever since we had the kids is our bedtimes are like clockwork every night,
Yeah,
right? And
right.
that's what gives me the time in the mornings. And what I've realized is I'm enjoying my morning time a lot more than I used to enjoy the time at night, right?
Interesting.
And the reason is the peace, the quiet, no emails, no phone calls,
Mhm.
nothing. It's
Right.
it's just you and yourself,
You
and
need that little bit of
yeah.
space to keep that mental health well.
Because Drew, like, answer this to me, like, how often do you sit and just reflect
Yeah,
with how busy you are with the brokerage that you're running, with the podcast that you're running, with all
right.
the things that are going in life? How often do you get to just sit and detune everything out of your life and say, you know what, how's Drew doing today?
Yeah.
What's the schedule for our physical health? What's the schedule for our mental health?
Sleep. Sleep. I sleep too much. That's my problem. Is like some I gotta trade a little bit of sleep for like hitting the gym, doing more hitting the morning yoga, right? Like trade a little bit of sleep for that. Like it'll go a longer way than sleeping till the
It's
last
getting outside of
minute.
your, yeah, 100%, but
Yeah,
it's getting outside of that comfort, right?
right.
It's literally just pushing yourself little by little every day. You know what a lot of people do is they make drastic changes, right?
Yeah.
And drastic
I'm
changes,
gonna run 5K today.
a
Like,
hundred percent. Like you can't wake up and say I'm gonna do a marathon,
yeah,
right? You
yeah,
train for it, right? So
right.
the thing is like even when you tell yourself that I'm gonna go to the gym, I'm gonna read a book, I'm gonna do everything. It all starts by little, right?
Right.
And James Clear wrote a really good book on this. It's called Atomic Habits, right? It's a secret of 1%. Just doing 1% better every day than yesterday, right? It adds up.
So Ikbir, what's new goals or initiatives that are you're working on with Khangura Partners LLP for the year ahead?
So for the year ahead, we have a lot of big plans. We're working with a lot of great agents, working with a lot of great realtors, mortgage brokers. Some of the better plans that we have upcoming this year is we have a lot of great initiatives to bring people together. We've been
Yeah.
doing a lot of events in which we're basically connecting a lot of the professionals that we work with each other. And the reason behind that is that I'm confident that in our industry, even with mortgage brokers meeting other mortgage brokers, or realtors meeting other realtors and lawyers, and bringing basically the community together, there's a collective success in that, right? Whether it creates referral circles for individuals, whether it encourages people to go find a mentor. I've had so many times where I've introduced a couple of people together, and it really just ignites something great, right? So we're really focusing on that. And also, as usual, for many years now, we've been very, very focused on giving back to the community. We always do our drives at Christmas. We're really engaging as a team right now to try to help as much as we can throughout the year to actually just make a community impact on the grassroots level, even in the community around us, to try to help a lot of people that it's been a tough year.
It's awesome. That's great. So where's the best place for our audience to find you if they need legal support for a transaction or investment?
Um, 647-920-2324. give me a call. That's my direct line. I always deal with all my brokers, realtors, everybody directly. So, that's the great place to find me. Otherwise, drop by my office at we're at Highway 7 and 27 in Woodbridge, and I make a great cup of coffee.
Awesome. Ikbir, thank you for the practical and honest insights today. You are what this show is all about. To our audience, thank you for tuning in for this awesome episode. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and keep your finger on the pulse.